and welcome to Blog Talk Radio, Freedom Reigns, with your host, Eternally Aware, week number 4. And hopefully, as my viewers have been coming to get to know me, I go by saying that I'm a human being with intrinsic rights. Based upon last week's episode, I had many questions come to me this week, and I'm going to be answering some of these questions, so let's just get off into it right away. If you look into the chat room, you're going to go see I provided a link. There you're going to have a link. It's www.usconstitution.net. And we're going to be talking about the amendments that were made to the U.S. Constitution and how they affect us. Now, last week we spoke about the fact that the U.S. Constitution, it applies strictly to people, to a legal person, a legal entity, that citizen. We talked about how the Declaration of Independence of America specifically brought forth the fact that there were rights and freedoms that were available to men. These rights and freedoms, they were natural rights and natural freedoms. These are inalienable rights that cannot be regulated. When you get into the U.S. Constitution now, you see in Article 9, it states this. This is the amendment. It says that the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So it clearly speaks about the fact that the enumeration of certain rights shall not deny or remove the other rights that the people have. Now, this type of legal declaration, this type of legal statement is also found in Canada. When you look into the Constitution Act of Canada, and I'm going to open up the page right here, even though I know what it says, Article 26, you're going to find the exact type of wording, the exact type of operation of law available for us in Canada as is available for those in the United States of America. In the Constitution Act of Canada, 1982, it states that the guarantee in this charter of certain rights and freedoms shall not be construed as denying the existence of any other rights or freedoms that exist in Canada. So here you're seeing exactly the same operation of law. We have it enumerated or listed in the Amendment number 9 on the Constitution Act, and we have it clearly enumerated here in Article 26 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, this amendment is just, like I said, bringing forth the fact that they're saying that there are certain rights and freedoms that are enumerated or listed in the Constitution, but these rights and freedoms that are listed in the Constitution, they do not deny you or do not rob you or remove from you the other rights and freedoms that are available to you. Now, when you look into the U.S. Constitution, Amendment Article 14, it states like this. It says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now, you have to take a notice here that they use the word all persons born or naturalized in the United States of America. Now, we would think that the wording here refers to all persons because of what we've been learning in Canada and what we're learning in the United States of America, that the indication here, person, would apply to the legal entity, that it would apply to the, if you will say, the artificial person that's been created in law. But watch this sentence slowly with me. It states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. So you see here, there's two different players being brought forth. Whatever this person is, it's either being born or naturalized in the States, and then it's being referred to as a citizen. When you look in the chat room here, you're going to notice that Black Law's 7th edition, it says that the word person can mean a human being, or it can mean an entity, such as a corporation. So when we have to take the two definitions here, either the word person in this sentence is referring to a human being, or it's referring to an artificial person. Now, when we read the whole context of this verse, we continue to go on. It says that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person. Now, notice again, they brought out two different players here. When they talked about privileges and immunities, they refer to the subject as being the citizen of the United States. But now they're bringing forth again the person, that other subject. And remember, the person can be a human being or an artificial person. So here it states, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, and property. Now, right away, we should understand and make a distinction here that this word here, person, the attributes or characteristics that are attached to this person of life, liberty, and property, not being deprived thereof, those are characteristics or attributes or liberties or rights that attach to the human being and the human being alone. We know that in law, an artificial person, the citizen, is not considered alive. It's a legal entity that's been given certain rights and freedoms of the human being. So we know that when we refer to the word citizen or artificial person, it doesn't have life. We know also that a citizen, a person, is a subject of the political power. In Canada, it's a subject of Her Majesty, and the citizen has to swear an oath of allegiance to Her Majesty. So therefore, it does not have liberty. So when you read here, again, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property, the player, the subject that is being brought forth, is the human being. So in Amendment number 14 of the U.S. Constitution brings forth the rights and freedoms of a human being. Because there are two different subjects. There are something that is termed a person and something that is termed a citizen. The citizen is the one who is given privileges and immunities, and the person designated here in this Amendment 14 has to be a human being. As we see in Black Laws, Edition 7, person can mean a human being because of the fact that the attributes that this person possesses is life, liberty, or property. Now notice that when they continue in this sentence, it says, and they cannot be deprived of this, the human being, without due process of law. Now, if you look back into the Constitution Act of Canada, it's the same situation that's going on here. In the Charter of Rights and Freedoms of Canada, it states that we have all these rights and freedoms, and that we cannot be denied these rights and freedoms except by the due process of law. So the same operation of law that is going on in Canada is going on in the United States of America. It's very important to draw this distinction. It's very important to understand what's going on here in Amendment 14. Because if you don't catch the fact that persons, the subject being brought forth in this amendment, is referring to the human being, then you won't understand that there is a door being presented to you to operate under your rights and freedoms as that human being. Rights and freedoms such as life, liberty, or property. Now, when we go back into the U.S. Constitution, Amendment 9, we're going to re-go over this quickly here. It says the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights. Okay? So, again, there are certain rights that have been enumerated in the Constitution. Those rights that are enumerated in the Constitution, not in the amendments, but in the Constitution itself, they apply to artificial persons. They apply to legal persons, to the corporate America. That's who those rights apply to. Now I'm just going to click here because there was just one more thing that I would like to show you about this part here. The U.S. Constitution, Amendment number 10. Now here's where it all ties in. It says, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution. So remember, in the Constitution Act of America, there are certain rights and freedoms that are enumerated in there. Those rights and freedoms, they apply only to the artificial person, the people, the citizen. Now here, in Amendment 10, it says that the powers that are not delegated, that are not given to America through the Constitution, are reserved to the states respectively, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So it's very clear that your human rights and fundamental freedoms, they operate at a state level. They also operate at a federal level, but they operate at a state level. Because the U.S. Constitution, the powers that are enumerated, that are granted to the, if you will say, the government through the U.S. Constitution, it does not grant you your human rights and fundamental freedoms. Only by jumping onto Article 14 of the amendments do you begin to see that there are other rights and freedoms that are available for you as a human being within America. Now, it says that these rights and freedoms can be removed from you through due process of law. And that's how they're doing it. Through due process of law, they remove, if you will say, your designation, your standing as a human being, and they treat you only like a citizen or a legal person that is upon their territory. And we're just going to check for callers right now. Hello, caller.
Hi.
How are you? I guess we just lost the caller, so that's fine. So again, we're seeing the exact same operations of law that are present in Canada. In Canada, we have a Constitution Act. Now, the Constitution Act in Canada, it is not the exact same thing as America. For America, your Constitution Act, it applies for corporate powers. It applies strictly and only within the context of the state, meaning that the state has rendered its subjects, citizens, legal entities under its declarations, and that is what the Constitution of America applies to, except the amendments that are attached thereof. In Canada, it's a little bit different. The Constitution of Canada, it applies to the legal corporation, the government, the executive powers, that branch of body in operation, but we also have our fundamental rights and freedoms as human beings contained within the Constitution. So while you guys in America have it attached as an amendment, we have it directly contained within the Constitution. Now, these are really important points. Why? Because as far as anyone is concerned right now, the only way that we are operating is through the operation or designation of legal person, of that entity that was created by law and given certain rights and freedoms of the human being. And as we've been speaking about for the past month or so, that entity is a medium, a mechanism that they use to levy from us, to take away from us, whether it's through taxation or through licenses or permits. It is a way that is used to enrich the government and stick a bondage on us to exercise our rights. Looking into the chat room, we have a few questions. We have one that says that somebody named Eco wrote and said that we have no rights or own property. It belongs legally to the Crown only. Well, this is concerning Canada that this man is questioning. If you look into the Criminal Code of Canada, here it brings out very clearly that we do actually have the right to have property. Article 39, it says that this is the Criminal Code of Canada. Listen to the wording. Defense with the claim of right. Everyone who is in peaceable possession of personal property under a claim of right, and everyone acting under his authority, is protected from criminal responsibility for defending that possession, even against a person entitled by law to the possession of it, if he uses no more force than is necessary. So here, somebody named everyone, a subject, has the right to be in peaceable possession of personal property. And that personal property that they have is being held under a claim of right. Now, when you go into the Canadian Criminal Code of Canada, we go back up into the interpretation section. And you guys can follow along if you want. It's not difficult. Just go to CanLE and open up the Criminal Code of Canada. But when you go into the Criminal Code of Canada, and we look for the word personal property, see, it says property includes real and personal property of every description and deeds and instruments relating to or evidencing the title or right to property, or giving a right to recover or receive money or goods. So, real or personal property of every description and deeds and instruments relating to the evidencing or title to the right of the property. So you can claim that your property that you're holding, whether it be a house, whether it be a television, no matter what it is, whatever you bought, and actually you actually need to do this, because if you don't hold it under a claim of right, then it does belong to the public body. Everything that you own or think that you own, it belongs to the public body, and you don't have any legal right or legal claim upon it. But if you produce a claim of right, and in that claim of right, you claim peaceable possession of your personal property, then you have the right or the ability in law to protect your property, and you are not criminally liable for defending that possession. And the law goes on to say, even against the person entitled by law to possession of it. So let me give you an example. Now, while I don't recommend you do this, this is an example. You have a mortgage. Unfortunately, times are tough. People are losing jobs. They can't afford their mortgages, and you've fallen behind. Now the bank has a judgment against you, and they're saying, get out of your house. We want to evict you. We want to take your house. If you claim that personal property under a claim of right, if that person, that bailiff or whoever it is, comes to your home and is waving a paper at you and saying, I'm entitled by law to the possession of this property, now get out of here because I have a court order, you have every right, if you've rendered a claim of right and put it into play, to stand there and say, no, I'm in peaceful possession of this personal property. I don't submit to the de facto judgment that you're bringing before me, and I'm entitled to protect this property. And I'm not going to use more force than necessary, but I'm entitled to protect it. So if you don't believe that you have the right to exercise ownership over property, complete ownership, then why is this expression coming out in the Criminal Code of Canada? Now, not only that, it talks about, secondary to this is, listen to this, defense without a claim of right. Everyone who is in peaceable possession of personal property but does not claim it as a right, or does not act under the authority of a person who claims it as a right, is not justified or protected from criminal responsibility for defending his possession against a person who is entitled by law to the possession of it. So, if you do not have a claim of right in play concerning your personal property, then you are not protected against criminal liability for trying to defend it. Now, what is all this expressing? Why is all this coming out? Because what we need to understand before we read these laws and try to make sense of them is that all our property, all the human beings here in Canada, all our property is being held in a public nature, in a public store, in a public way, for public use. Even though we pay the bills, even though we are the ones who are stuck footing the bill, the way it's set up in law, it's all set up as public property. Now, unless you, under a claim of right, claim back whatever belongs to you out of that public store, out of that public property domain, then you don't have the right to say that it's actually yours. You don't have the right to express complete ownership over it. And if you try, they're going to lay an act or a regulation against you where they have superior rights to your property. But, and if you hold your personal property under a claim of right, then there's your expression of ownership upon your property. So this same expression of law that is going on in Canada concerning property rights, it's in exercise in America. The ability to use it is there in America. Now, there was something I wanted to talk about concerning the human rights and freedoms in America. There are some people who are teaching in America that there are court judgments that are going around concerning the fact that you don't have to pay a license or a fee to exercise the right to travel or to exercise the right to drive. While I am in agreement with that fact, if you are not exercising a commercial capacity, they have no business in America trying to license you or place a fee upon you to travel. These people in the States that are teaching about this freedom to travel, they are quoting certain justifications. For example, they are quoting the court judgment Murdoch versus Pennsylvania. And this is what they are telling your fellow Americans. They are saying that you don't have any obligation to pay for a fee or to pay for a license, and the court agrees with you. That's not exactly what has been said. I'm going to read to you what Murdoch versus Pennsylvania says. It says, accordingly, it restrains in advance those constitutional liberties of press and religion. The inability tends to suppress their exercise. Let me restart that again. Here. As stated by the Supreme Court of Illinois, in a case involving the same sect and in an ordinance similar to the present one, a person cannot be compelled to purchase through a license, fee, or a license tax the privilege freely granted by the Constitution. So let's take this judgment, this sentence, in this judgment step by step. And for those who are not familiar with what the heck I'm talking about, please just bear with me, because I'm sure there are going to be some who are familiar, who have come across this, and I would rather take the time to explain this than for you to get damaged by listening to what they are saying. Now here it says, as stated by the Supreme Court of Illinois, in a case involving the same sect and an ordinance similar to the present one, a person. Now here's the subject player, a person. Okay, now this person here can either be a human being or can be the legal entity, the artificial person. Now it says a person cannot be compelled to purchase through a license, fee, or license tax. Okay, we still don't know which subject we're talking about. Is this person a human being, or is this person an artificial person, the citizen, the subject? Now it goes, the privilege freely granted by the Constitution. So it comes out. This person here is the person that's being expressed in the Constitution, because this judgment reads as follows. It says that a person cannot be compelled to purchase through a license or fee or a license tax the privilege freely granted by the Constitution. So we know that the Constitution, it is only dealing with, except in the amendments, the artificial person, that legal person. And the privileges or the rights and freedoms that are granted or enumerated in the Constitution apply to the citizen. So therefore, in this court judgment, when they are referring to the person cannot be compelled to purchase through a license, fee, or license tax, they're referring to the artificial person. So now let's go back into the Constitution Act. Do we find anywhere in the Constitution Act where the citizen, that legal entity, has been granted the right to travel, or has been granted the right, even let's use a designation, to drive? No, not at all. We don't find that. That right comes out in America through a subsequent act that legislators and the Senate has passed. But when you apply this here onto the Constitution Act, there's no right or freedom that is granted to a person, to a citizen, to freely drive or to freely travel. There's none. There is a right or a freedom, an inalienable one, upon a human being has the right to travel without being licensed or regulated. That's a human fundamental right. But the Constitution of America, what we're talking about here, does not apply to the human being. It applies to the subject or to the player. So be careful. When someone tells you that Murdoch versus Pennsylvania has granted you the right to do anything without a license or a license tax, as a man or as a human being, they're twisting what's being determined here, because the person, the subject that's being brought forth, is the one that is under or constrained by the Constitution Act, and we know that person is strictly the legal person. Hello, caller. 2581.
Just listening.
You're just listening? You're not on the call tonight?
No, I was just listening.
Oh, okay, because you came up as a caller. Nice to meet you.
What's up? You too.
Are you from America?
Yeah.
Oh, you are. Have you ever heard of your human rights and fundamental freedoms?
Yes, I have.
You have, huh? Have you heard it
Yeah.
Have you heard it as the free man movement, or just as a human being?
As a citizen.
As a citizen, huh?
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to listen to the radio show last week?
No, I didn't get a chance to catch it.
Okay, we went over the fact that citizen, in legally, it means that you are determining, or you are calling yourself a subject or a servant of a political party. So when you say or take the designation of citizen, it means that you are under subjection to a political power. You're not free. You're not in freedom or liberty. There's no way There's no way that you find the word citizen in any type of legal context that grants you freedom. A citizen in Canada is under subject to the Crown or to Her Majesty. The citizen in America is under subject to the political power, to the President of the United States of America. Your only designation that renders you free and liberty is either man-human being. When you take that designation, then you are free from any corporate designation or any corporate yokes upon your life. But as long as you take the designation citizen, whether it's a world citizen or American citizen or private citizen, you are still saying that you are a citizen and you are subject to the political powers that are in operation in your state. Are you aware of that?
Somewhat.
Okay, because it's just a really important point to take note of. Because in order for you to begin to exercise your rights and freedoms, you don't want to be designated by anybody. You don't want anybody to designate you anything. You're a man, a woman, i.e. you can say human being, and that's it. Think about it. If the government doesn't tell you what you are, what would you have said you are? Do you understand what I'm saying? If you didn't know a citizen, if you didn't know the word citizen and person and all this, you wouldn't have ever sat back and said, well, let me scratch my head and decide what am I going to designate myself. You just live your life. And you just express your freedoms and your rights that you have. You wouldn't sit there questioning them or trying to determine them. It's because the government stripped you of the one designation that matters the most. That being human being. That being man. And by stripping you of that designation, they've placed you in servitude to a commercial system. And I won't keep you on any longer. I just want to encourage you to either listen to the broadcast from last week and or just do a little search yourself about designating yourself a citizen. It's not something that I would particularly want to place upon my own self.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right. Nice talking to you. Take care of yourself.
You too. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It behooves me, because even myself, if you would have known me before, or let's even go back 10 years ago, I was a proud Canadian citizen. I was proud of the liberties that I felt that I had. I was proud of the fact that my country was a multicultural country, that I had Asian people, African people, Indian people, and I'm still proud of all those attributes of this land that is expressed here. I didn't realize what I was terminating myself. I didn't realize what I was designating myself when I would apply that designation of Canadian citizen. And even now, it's sad, because in a way I'd like to say I'm part of Canada. Why? Because we're a great nation, and I think our people, we treat each other very civilly. Apart from what we're experiencing from the corruption in the government, I think on an individual level, we're a different type of people. You know, we're able to come together when the need be, and we have some type of respect for one another. So in that way, I'm proud to be a so-called Canadian. But when you actually realize what you're saying, it's wow. So we're born into these systems. They designate us citizens, either naturally or born into the system, and we never even question it. And this is a bondage that is placed upon our lives, where we just continue to live our lives, and they make demands on us through that citizenship, through that personhood, and it's like, oh wow, we don't know what's going on. Okay, it may seem funny, but that is exactly what's going on. We are being indoctrinated from when we are young. We have I'm just going to have to take just a little break here. I'm trying to get on... I'm having a little trouble here. I'm trying to get a co-host onto the show here, and it seems I'm having a little bit of trouble to get him to come onto the show. I'm going to try one more time here, and if not, I'll just continue with the show. I'm not having much callers tonight, but that's okay. I mean, I'm jumping in between Canadian and American laws. I was asked to do this show. Oh, well, that's not going to work. So here we go. I'll cancel that. No, I can't get you on. So my co-host who's trying to call in, I just can't get you on. So, and I have nobody else helping me on the board tonight. So, oh well. And try again. If I see your number come up, then here, I'm going to give you this phone number to call. see maybe you can work it in that way. People don't have time to worry about their rights and freedoms. That's what this commercial system's hoping about. They're hoping that that we just get caught up in having to provide for our lives and having to provide for our families, that we don't understand that there are other rights and freedoms that are available to us. And why is it so important? People ask me that question, like, why do you strive so much to teach about rights and freedoms? Because we're actually, like I said, we're actually living a life that we don't have to live, whether we want to accept it or not. We're being placed into bondage, into servitude to a commercial system. Now, if you believe in God, or if you believe in something that created you and placed you in this world, can you really say that, well, I was placed to serve a system? Well, no, you were supposed to serve your God, right? Not a system. But we're serving a system. And this system, if it crashes, like I have videos up on my YouTube, I like to talk about this, but if this system crashes, we're so used to the system, we're so relied on this system, that without it, what could we really do? Without it, how could we really sustain our lives? We wake up in the morning, first thing we do is we turn on the electricity wherever we are. Then turn on the water and get some hot water. Start our day. We need food. Open the fridge. It came from the grocery store. So without this system, we're in a lot of trouble. Yes, David. How you doing?
Am I on?
Of course.
Hey, I thought I was just listening. I had to push one. I am well, John. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad. It's been a tough couple of weeks there with what's going on through the justice systems, but not bad.
So you're finding yourself there quite often?
Oh no, I'm okay for myself. It's just there's been a few that have been trying to exercise their rights and freedoms, and some are getting are making major victories, and then some are being thrown out of court. They can't get their act together.
Yeah, our mutual friend Dee, just had a ruling against her, which is rather sad because her and I were in the same situation, yet I didn't suffer the same economic burden.
I think they were scared to do that to you.
So, do you think perhaps it was because of the feminine they were more assertive?
It's perhaps. Was it a man judge that she had?
Actually, I'm not quite sure. I didn't ask that, but I had a female prothonotary. Okay. And from the judgment, she did two things. And I think she put an amazing amount of power back into my hands.
Yes.
But one of the things that she did was that she struck my claim against Her Majesty the Queen, saying, like they've been using with everybody else, that there's no known cause of action. And so I personally believe no known cause of action means we don't know how to collapse ourselves.
Yeah.
So, but aside from that, she had also said, considering I was a self-represented individual.
She used individual.
She used the word individual.
Nice that you caught it.
Right? There are no costs on this claim. Now, the two things that happened there was that I stood there as an individual. There was zero representation.
Yep.
And I don't think that we should maybe even ever use the word representation.
I agree.
Because you're putting the re in front of presenting yourself doesn't sound proper to me.
No, that's for sure.
And I think that we should always say just present.
Did you get a chance to hear about Alan's case?
No, I have not.
The judge cleared the courtroom. Alan went up there and he said, I'm a human being. I'm invoking my rights and freedoms. I'm just paraphrasing here. And he said, I want to know, are you Her Majesty's court or are you the de facto power court? The judge said, everybody who's not has to do with this case, get out of the courtroom. All public out of the courtroom, and they closed the doors. And he said, and then Alan continued to question him, and the guy said, okay, well, we're going to see what we're going to have to do about this case.
Interesting. Now, what was the base? What was it
Taxation.
in regard to?
Taxation.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
So it's crazy. I mean, it's very clear. When you go into the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, they don't even have the right to tax you as a person. They don't. As a people, they don't have that right. You are not under any obligation to give up any of your natural wealth or any of the wealth that you earn or you pursue after to them. And that's what... Go ahead.
What I find curious, it's almost like a gamble when we get before these judges as to who has the knowledge of what is going on. And then at that point, it could, I mean, some judges just really have no clue, and they get afraid and they don't know what to do. I mean, personally, I don't know who was in the courtroom for him, but I would not have left the courtroom if I was there for him. Public matters are public matters. Yes,
that's for sure.
Right? So I don't know who was back there, but my point being is that it's incredible challenge, but they will recognize you if you invoke very specific things. It's very specific what you have to invoke.
Yes.
In order to receive remedy. And
yes.
Without these very specific places to point to, what I like to say is basically, you wrote it. Right? Like, what can they say to that? Excuse me, you wrote this. Did you read it? Because if they're making presumptions that we understand and they're in a position of authority, I believe the presumption is, in fact, already there where we can dispute it through ignorance.
Yeah.
Right? Ignorance not necessarily that we didn't take the time to understand. Ignorance in the fact that there's a mask of language being used.
But don't you think it's horrible what they're doing to us? I mean, they're doing the same application in the United States of America as in Canada, but you have a good understanding. You're fighting for your rights, but don't you think after having learned all that have they stripped you of your rights and freedoms and the obligations that they have to you as a human being, don't you think it's sad that the government has done this? Instead of support rights and freedoms and instead of support human rights and freedoms here in Canada, because we have the finances, they don't. They steal it away from us.
Being who I am, I actually feel that I must take action, and in fact I do. There are videos out there on a YouTube channel called Chip Messiah where you can see me serving 6 police officers and a parks manager a notice, and they actually read that notice and they skedaddle once they realize the burden was placed back upon them to obey the law. And so I've come to understand that being a human rights defender, you can indeed serve and protect as long as you have placed in front of, let's just say, I hate the word, but let's just say your adversary, the information they need. They cannot deny, they cannot say ignorance. And so in a notice form, which is a legal form, if you send that well in advance of any action, they really have no recourse. A notice and demand is a notice and demand. And if you have evidence, which means you need proof of service, that you served this upon them, there's no way they can turn around and come and cause you harm, because now you have all the evidence that you need that they were aware of the situation in advance.
Well, how many years did you live without ever hearing about your human rights and freedoms?
John, my entire life. I'm the same as you. I discovered this movie called Bursting the Bubbles of Reality.
Yeah.
And that started me on a journey, but the entire time I was never really convinced because nothing was being disclosed. So I took the time to go and look and look and look and look. And, I'm a firm believer in the natural law, and the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, brought me to a place where I was prepared to do what I needed to do for myself, which I did. And I mean, amazingly, the next thing I know, I discovered your channel. But at first, when I discovered your channel, I was all like in a big panic, and I was like, "Oh my God, did I do everything right?" So I went and I started going through my stuff, and I realized there were some small mistakes, but I actually used the proper things in the proper place, and that secured my claim of right. My claim of right. But now I have a claim of right in. This is another really great thing about doing a claim of right and then taking it into a court of law, because you have to serve it upon the Justice Department.
Yes.
Once the Justice Department... Now, if it's included within a statement of claim against Her Majesty or whatever it is there. It's inside.
Yeah.
Right? And
they have to take recognition.
That it has been served, even though you may have served it at one angle from a different... Let's say you've served it upon a Canada Revenue Agency who actually put ink to paper and said, dude, you better do something or you're in trouble. Right? And you served it on the ink signer, okay? Because I firmly believe the ink signer has the liability.
Yes,
right? And let it carry back upstream if that's the way it actually follows in law, which it does if you take the time to look at ministerial duties. You find out that they best have an eye on everything, right? They are Big Brother. They best know what their little minions are doing, because
the minister's accountable. Minister's accountable.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, I was just posting a whole bunch of stuff in the chat room about how you about understanding that there is a municipal bond, that there is each and every single one of them has an indemnity bond. It indemnifies their actions. There's money. A lot of them know this, and they just kick it in the teeth anyways, because it's not their frickin' money. They have an indemnity bond. But the thing is the insurance company starts to get pissed off. And this is what we need to start doing, is going after the indemnity bond through our human rights.
Okay, I hear you. Have you looked into the Financial Administrative Act concerning these bonds?
I haven't got there. I've only just come to really realize what that oath meant and how they do indeed, how it's associated with an indemnity bond and how they're indemnified for their actions, being a limited liability entity. Again, a corporate entity, right?
Exactly.
Right? So them having the limited liability lies in the fact that in order, like for the municipality to operate in the public domain, they must be bonded against harm in the public domain.
Exactly. This bonding, anything that's awarded under a public, if you will say, indemnity bond, comes out of the Canadian Consolidation Fund here in Canada. It's actually the finance minister of Canada that has control of this whole situation. So if you want to get into the bonding, and into them breaking their duties and them owing you something, it's him you have to contact. Because when you read about it, you're going to see it's him who's been placed in control of all this.
Well, now you're aware that I received a letter.
Okay.
From basically the head of what's called the cash and banking sector.
Okay.
And that is located within Public Works and Government Services Canada, which is under the Receiver General.
Yes.
So, I'm breaking down the layers here, right? Basically, it goes Receiver General, and then there's all these other different departments. But that department in specific, the cash and banking sector, is the ones who are paying out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund on instructions for payment.
Okay.
Right. So you were talking earlier about how we can basically use our natural resources, each and every one of us. See, this is the thing that I've come to realize, is that equality comes from a base.
Yes.
The base is that everybody gets the same thing.
Yes.
And so in Canada, they did indeed implement, I believe it's Article 2 of the ICCPR.
Yes, they did.
They did implement it through an instruction for payment, but the bank took that ability away from us. And in order for the bank to respect us, we need to break the fiduciary control that's being held over our bond. And now, this is the only way that each and every one of us in Canada can actually have equality. Every man, woman, and child, if we all had the same base, which is there, waiting for us to have, it's there.
Exactly.
It's waiting for us to have all the same base. And then from there, if we so choose to live above our human needs, above our basic human needs, then we choose to participate in one way or another in society, right?
David, you're expressing this very beautifully.
You know what? We need to go back to an honor system. We've lost a system where we can stand upon ourselves and say, I am responsible for what I do.
Yes.
And this is something that people need to realize, is that there's the natural law, and I don't care what people want to term it, but you cannot deny the fact that gravity and all these other forces of nature are interacting with our consciousness, and we're much more powerful than what we believe in that domain. And that man's law has been created specifically to take us away from the natural domain where we evolved, to live in an artificial place where we're not operating at our full and proper capacity.
No, we're subjects and servants of a commercial system, and we don't sometimes realize the complete implication upon our lives, upon our character, upon our spirit. When you're brought into a subject or into servitude, that debases you. It takes from you. It doesn't make you strong. You may not understand that that's your position, but just talking about what you're saying about spiritual side, if you're being held in bondage, if your life, if your essence is constantly in bondage and is being called upon from that side, it's not something that brings you upliftment. It's not something that brings you strength.
Well, that's the first question that you asked me, was how do I feel about what has transpired here in Canada?
Yeah.
Now, I've never really been one for authority. I kind of grew up in a broken home and stuff, and had started making decisions, not wise ones, at a young age. And so, I was quite a defiant individual, but there came a point where I grew up and I started screwing around. I stopped screwing around and, started doing the things that I needed to do to correct myself. And I think...
And become that citizen and fall in line.
Well, I mean, even when I was screwed up, I was 16 years old, man, riding motorcycles like a maniac with a driver's license. I didn't know any better, right? I didn't know that I could actually express that as a piece of personal property, which I could use without having to ask permission to do so. But here's the catch, and this is why we indeed do need governance, is because at 16 years old, I was a complete incompetent.
I agree with you. Thank you for bringing up that. Thank you for bringing up that point.
I was complete incompetent, and we can't ourselves police.
No.
Because we have judgments and all these flaws and stuff, and so we need individuals, who are of a good character. We're talking character here now, right?
Yes.
Who can use logic and understand harm and understand equity, and we still need governance, but we what we got to stop doing is electing the rich, for fuck's sakes.
That's for sure.
What's the stupidest fucking thing? Whoever thought of, I guess it's because they got the money to put themselves in these positions, but it's such a ridiculous thing when, and thank, the great spirit, because here within this electronic medium that you and I connect with each other, our spirits get to really soar.
That's for sure.
And it's through the great spirit that we're all here meeting together right now, and we're all trying to elevate. Really, I think, is the basic principle of what consciousness is doing, is we're moving in a pattern just like nature does, and we're spiraling up the pattern of consciousness. And these people with money, they can't actually stop it. I mean, they're at a position now where they have money and technology that can be used against us, which is becoming really dire and very dangerous for us all, I believe.
What do you think of our forefathers? when they were doing this to us, and we know that back in the day they didn't have the education that we have nowadays. They didn't have the ability to read and discern things. But imagine that over the generations, how they stripped us of all these rights and freedoms, generation after generation, and it doesn't seem like we really screamed that much. It doesn't seem like you understand when you check for it in history. I know I've done my own personal research there. It's like there's only a little bit of waves about it, but it was just like, oh well,
the French were good at it. But it's this stuff like this now is degenerated into just looting and burning apartment blocks and destroying innocent people's lives. And I do believe that we need to participate, but I believe we need to understand our allies, and that even though our allies may be asleep at this moment in time, or they may be a little busy, okay, that we need to go and occupy the proper places where the message can be heard. Like me personally, okay, if I could, I would go to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
In Ottawa, Ontario.
Yes.
And not a single case would be heard again until
they deal with this.
That create ill will amongst the different classes of persons.
Very good. Keep going.
Dealt with.
Very good. Very good.
Right? Because that's the root problem right there, isn't it, John? Classes of persons.
Yes, but
right?
most people don't even understand that even Her Majesty, even this Canadian government, the way it's set up, they're not supposed to make how do you say that, enmity between different classes of persons. And if they do that, that alone gives you a right to go before them and say, hang on a second, why am I sitting at, let's say, $25,000 a year when this guy's sitting at $200,000 a year? Just by allowing that to happen, you made different classes of persons, and you brought up feelings that are causing dissent and division here in our country.
Well, this is what they do, right? They've put this palpable piece of paper in front of us called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, right? Which in fact is a beautiful document if you understand how to use it.
Yes.
Because there are aspects to it that aren't to your benefit.
Yes, that's for sure.
Aside from that, I'm sorry, John.
No.
Where were we at? I lost my train of thought because I'm being distracted here.
No, that's okay. I was just amazed on the fact that they.
Classes of persons.
Exactly.
This is where we were at, right? Now, here's the paradox, right? They tell us there's equality. Okay? They did. And this is the palpable piece of paper that I'm talking about is the one that they say nationally is ours.
Yeah.
Right? But then the one that somebody doesn't look at, which is the Financial Administration Act, because they've been led to believe that things are a little more complex than what you may be able to understand, and you're going to need an accountant or a lawyer or whatever game they want you hopping on to. But the fact of the matter is that section 19.1 of the Financial Administration Act is the very section that enables all other statutes and acts to diminish your human rights and return to you what are called civil rights. Civil rights that you are accessible under a corporate charter, right? Again, there's so many pieces, okay, that one must put together. You have to understand, first off, the position of the Governor General in Canada.
Very good.
And you've got to also understand how Canada is operating as a corporation and is not operating as a country.
That's right.
And how each and every individual in this country has been monetized, but in that monetization, what they've gone and done is on the public side, they've placed the debt upon us, and they're collecting our private side where we're supposed to be meeting our basic human needs.
Exactly.
And
very well expressed.
This using Section 36 of the Financial Administration Act with the banks instead of us. See, the bank is supposed to only play intermediary.
Yes, administrator.
Right? Yeah, they're supposed to, and so we basically are supposed to offset, but that's been taken away from us. And now
how?
are using all of those instruments that we gave up the right to use through application, and they're benefiting from those instruments multiple times over.
Yep.
Because I honestly believe that as soon as somebody signs a mortgage agreement here in Canada, the next day, the evidence is it's paid off, and then the evidence is destroyed. See, now, I myself, when I broke fiduciary control by the finance minister, it rolled downhill to a very specific individual in Canada, whom I won't name because I'm going to let her know that I am going to name her soon.
That's the one you sent me?
Yes. But basically, they responded by saying, hey, look, we took the appropriate action, meaning they broke the constructive hold over my trust. But what I was doing was I was submitting directly to them, which leaves evidence. Can't do that in order for them to destroy the document. So they kept rejecting it. Because the only way to actually do it is to put all of the evidence in the bank's hands, because the bank is a member of the Canadian Payments Association. And if you read closely in the Financial Administration Act, it is the Canadian Payments Association that gets access to it, as well as ministers. Right?
Yes.
So because they are a member of the Canadian Payments Association, as you can read in Section 35, I think it's paragraph 2 or B or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yes, it does, in fact, mention the Canadian Payments Association members. So they're the ones who are using the instructions for payment, and then it's being destroyed. And so this is why I think one of the reasons why we need to start going after the bank within the courts is because what we're asking to do and getting in return is, dude, we see what's going on here, but you're asking us to collapse the public trust upon itself.
Yeah.
We know the operation of law to do that. And this is why we must, each of us, bring a bank involved, because the way we can play it, this is genius. The way we can play it is to alleviate their guilt for what they're doing, because there are good people there in the justice system.
There are good people. There are.
In the justice system. And we can alleviate their guilt by throwing the blame. Hey, buddies, Her Majesty's been misled.
Yep.
There are matters which create ill will.
Yep, coming through the banking system. But you see, David, people won't even understand what you're saying right now until they fundamentally start building up to where your comprehension is right now. You could sit down with individuals and try and explain this to them, and they won't grasp it. They won't comprehend. Because you understand it, because you
do it every day, bro. I point my finger. I say, look what it says right here. And people are... the apathy is stunning, right? Now, I work in a very professional industry with a lot of really intelligent minds. And it blows me away that I'm being treated the way that my power within this industry, not that they can do anything to me because there's a system of hierarchy, but my power within this industry is very much diminished because I'm looked at as an individual who is a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's no real respect for me. There's no standing, right? There's a phone call. Do you want this, this, or this? Because they're obligated to do so because I'm a member in good standing. But once I get there, there's, I'm lucky to find an individual on a call who understands what I'm doing.
I hear you.
So it's a very difficult because it can be a social situation, and then I'm sitting there and they're talking about the stupid frickin' TV, right? And then they'll say something about hockey, and I'll be like, oh well, did you see what's happening in Greece? Like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, there's riots, man, and the people are throwing Molotovs, and the police are burning to a crisp out there, And my one guy's like, people shouldn't do that, man. It's just not right. It's just not right. Those guys are just doing their job. I said, whoa, hold on a second. Wait a second. What do you mean? The police are doing their job? I said, yeah, man. They're doing it. I said, no, they're not doing their job. If they were doing their job, they'd be arresting the government, don't you think?
Yeah.
And, he completely fought me on that ideal.
Because
he completely felt like the entire population of Greece was wrong. Okay?
Yep.
For not liking an instilled government, a government that was not elected, okay, and that has turned the financial direction of Greece so that everybody suffers and the people are out in the street doing something about it.
Yep.
Right? And he thinks that, the police killing innocent people who just want to express their human rights is doing their job. Now,
what you're seeing there, though, Dave, is his expression of his acceptance of authority. That authority is always right, no matter what.
Yes, it's called cognitive dissonance, though, because I think it's an illness that is really predominant in society is cognitive dissonance, because everybody feels that hole. Everybody understands something's wrong. Everybody can see that things aren't operating the way they're supposed to, but they're not willing to change their worldview. So they're just going to collect what they can for themselves or do what they can for their family. And because it hurts, John, it fucking hurts to know what's happened to us.
Yes, it does.
I have 10 nieces and nephews coming up in this world who have no idea that they're going to be living in a future of pure hell unless men like you and I and those who are listening and are willing to spread the word and do the honorable thing and stand up. Hold your ground peacefully and say, I am a man. Because really it comes back down to that, right? I don't know what we are in society anymore. Like, there's a role for us that is being manipulated through the mass media. And, I think we're just supposed to be ourselves. And
well, what you said there is perfect. I mean, you have to make that declaration of like, I'm a man, I'm a woman, and those rights and freedoms that are guaranteed to me, you can't take away from me. And those are the rights and freedoms that I want to operate under. But I always say it's like, you can't make that declaration, you can't make that stand if no one's ever taught you what is there for you.
It's a nice idea that we can all have access to the Consolidated Revenue Fund and be as equals here in Canada. But John, and I hate to be a real bummer, but the God's honest truth is that there are these individuals that
who are against it, and they want nothing.
Are moving quickly on the world stage. You know what I mean? And it would seem as though the way they're behaving is through arrogance, like they've got it all worked out regardless.
Oh, that's it. I agree with you. That's why I always say
that we're really in imperative and perilous times because if anybody has seen the Georgia Guidestones, the plan is really eugenics. They say that they want to create a new living language. Well, that means newspeak, folks. Okay, that's what that means. It actually means newspeak, right? And so this new living language, they want to control genetics. Okay, that's eugenics, right? They 500 million people on the face of the planet, no more, no less. There's 7 billion people on the planet, right? So their plan is not a secret. What's a secret is that we're, living in a myth.
We're living in a fiction, that's for sure. We're living in a commercial system that's been set up all around us, and this commercial system, it's just there to take from us. And it takes from us by changing our designation, removing us from the fact that we are human beings with rights and freedoms that are supposed to be respected, and they take it and place us as artificial beings. Wow. So I was talking for 25 minutes with no mic going. That is kind of horrible. I'm sorry to my listeners tonight. There seemed to have been a problem. I'm going to just expose this right now. I've had a few callers that have called on, and they've been sitting there and just taking up the line. When I try to call them and contact them, they hang up. Now, I had another person who was supposed to co-host with me. Every time he calls, his audio is silent. Every time he calls, he keeps getting kicked off for some reason. Now, I came back from my my break, and my audio was telling me that it was functioning. My audio was fine. I was speaking. I've been speaking since 23 minutes, nearly 24 minutes, sharing quite a lot about rights and freedoms. And my neighbor knocked on my door and told me, I cannot hear you. Something's wrong. And now I see that people have saying that they weren't able to hear me. So this is horrible. I don't know what happened, and I'm very, very sorry about that. I'm going to give a rundown of what I was saying. Before we went to commercial break, David was expressing the fact that he had woken up to the information that there were two different designations in law. One a human being and one a person, an artificial entity. That through his due diligence, his hard studying, he had learned that he had other rights and freedoms that were available to him. That Canada, and this also applies to America, were only offering him certain rights and freedoms through the designation of citizen. And those rights and freedoms were actually privileges and benefits, the which he had to pay for. Through his study, he saw that there were other rights and freedoms that were not listed in the laws of Canada or in the laws of America, but that Canada or America were under obligation to respect. He subsequently approached his country and he made a claim of recognition and told them, you have been treating me like an artificial person for these number of years. Now I understand that I am a human being, I am a man, and I do not want to be rendered or designated a subject or a servant to Her Majesty or a political power. As such, you have certain obligations to me. You have certain duties to me. And he's begin to call on the accountability that Canada has towards him as a human being. And these are the same expressions of law, these are the same operations of law that are available to you in America. Now, while I was yapping to nobody, because for some reason the microphone wasn't working, I went back into the Declaration of Independence for you guys. And I said, always remember that in that Declaration of Independence, and I read it, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary, okay, to assume the powers of the earth, the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle you to, that you, as a human being, have been granted unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's very clear in the Declaration of Independence that the ones who have the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is a man or a woman, that human being. When we come into the U.S. Constitution, into the amendment, Article 14, and we see that it is talking about the fact that a human being, or man or woman, has the right to life, liberty, and property. And that these rights cannot be taken away without due process of law. In Canada and in America, they try to strip you of your fundamental rights and freedoms as a man or as a woman by something that they call due process of law. This due process of law is by rendering you, by designating you that citizen, that legal person. For the citizen is a subject or a servant of the political power or of Her Majesty. You, as a human being, don't have to accept the privileges, don't have to accept the benefits of the citizen. You have every right to stand. When you begin to study and when you begin to research about your fundamental rights and freedoms, you will see that the state parties, America and Canada, can strip you. Apparently, okay, they have the right to remove certain rights and freedoms from you. But they can only do so by what the covenant allows them to do. And any right and freedom that you find being removed from you or being placed or limited upon you has nothing to do with a man or a woman. They can never tell you as a man and a woman that you, let's for example say, you have to pay taxes. Now, they can never come and tell you, as a man or a woman, that you have to give your servitude over to the Queen here in Canada, or you have to give your servitude over to Her Majesty. They can never do that. Why? Because these are fundamental rights and freedoms that you have. However, just want to make sure here, everyone can still hear me? Somebody in the chat room, please say yes. Hello, caller.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I was listening to you online, and I no longer can hear you online for like the last, if you got 16 minutes remaining in the show, it's been about the last 20 minutes that I haven't heard anything.
And it hasn't fixed up yet?
No.
Some people are telling me that it has fixed up. In my chat room, if you go to the chat room there, it says that it's fixed up. David can hear me, and Loud and Clear can hear me, and you're saying you can't hear me.
I cannot. I've refreshed the page, and I still don't get anything.
I'm very sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I know that we were having trouble just a little while ago, and then it seemed to have kicked in, and I was talking, and they're still saying they can hear me. So maybe, are you on a delay?
No, not that I know of, or a light delay maybe. But it shouldn't be that much of a delay. Anyway, this will probably go down in the archive. I'll be able to listen to it afterwards.
I hope so, yes, that's for sure. I'm very sorry about the technical problems that we had today. It's very odd that that's going on. I was supposed to have a special host with me, one of my buddies, and every time he tries to get on, he gets kicked off. He's getting redirected and reset.
Yeah, I also went to your website, Eternally Aware, and sent you a message that I'd like to talk to you sometime about a few little issues that I don't want to discuss over the air at the moment.
Okay, did you leave me your email address?
I did, yes, I did.
Okay, well, was this recently or?
Yes, this afternoon I left one.
Okay, I'll go check it out and I'll get back to you. I just haven't had a chance to look at it. And for those who leave me messages on my Eternally Aware, they have to leave me their email if they want me to get back to them, because it doesn't automatically tell me their email.
All right, I'll let you get back to the show, and then I'll look forward to checking it out here in just a little bit when it ends.
Okay.
It'll be archived.
Okay.
Hey, John, you're doing great work. I love what you're doing.
All right, I really appreciate it.
And I'm hoping that I can utilize it in my way. I'm here in the United States.
It's exactly the same. You have the exactly same rights and freedoms that we have available here in Canada. You have the exact same rights and freedoms that every human being has for them.
Yeah, it's just me. I'm trying to learn how to access and get into that part of the jurisdiction and make it all available.
Are you familiar with the Declaration of Independence?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and had you happened to listen to the show last week?
Yeah, I've listened to the last 3 shows. I've even listened to them over.
Oh, okay. So when you'll hear this show today, and you're going to see where I spoke to you about the amendment, Article 14 and the like, you're going to be able to connect the dots there. Just pay attention to the subject, to the player that's being mentioned.
Right. All right. Well, thank you, John.
You're welcome,
keep up the great work.
I really appreciate that comment. Thank you very much.
Yeah. God bless you, and hope all goes.
Hello, David. Dave, you're back on?
John?
Yes, I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay, so there's things happening on my end as well. I get cut right to the...
Oh,
so,
you're
Echelon is...
Okay, well, tonight we're having a lot of trouble. It seems that there are a lot of gremlins in the system. Actually, we should have had no trouble because there was nothing wrong on my end. And like I said, my other buddy can't get on, and now I'm trying to speak with David, and I can't get on. So I'm just going to continue to go because we only have about 13 minutes left to the show this week, and I'm very sorry to my viewers. I was trying to say before I took the caller is that America and Canada, they claim they have the right to limit your rights and freedoms, but they can't just do it by anyhow. any means. They can't just make up any law and say, I decided this way. And even if they call on executive powers, like America likes to do or Canada likes to do, there's still an obligation that overrules these executive powers. Now, these obligations, they overrule the executive powers not for the citizen, not for the legal person, only for the human being. If you look in Canada, if you want to just check and see if what I'm stating to you is truth or not, you can go and check the Federal Act, and it's called the Emergencies Act of Canada. And in it, you're going to see that even during an emergency, Canada has the obligation that are brought forward within the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And when you look into the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it specifically states that the state parties, meaning Canada or America, they are limited in the way that they can play with our rights and freedoms. Once you study these covenants, you're going to understand exactly what operations of law that they use to limit rights and freedoms. For me to explain this tonight would be way too difficult and would take way too much time. But nevertheless, they have, if you will say, a guideline or a guidebook that comes out of these covenants that allows for them to limit rights and freedoms. Now, the limit of these rights and freedoms are only subjective upon the citizen, that legal person, not upon the human being. In fact, you find just the opposite. In the international covenants and in the Bill of Rights, you find that the human being's rights and freedoms are not to be removed. There is no operation of law that is supposed to be subjected upon them whereby they can be removed. So instead of letting you, if you will say, operate as a human being, they change your designation into the legal person, into the artificial person, and thereby they begin to apply limitations upon you. And these limitations that they apply upon you, they will say are lawful or legal, because they are within the guidelines that are applicable or that they are following. Now, once again, you flip this all on them by saying, well, hang on. You told me I was a legal person. You said that I'm a subject and I'm in servitude to your political system or to Her Majesty. That is against my fundamental right. As a man, as a woman, as a human being, that is against my fundamental right. Are you saying that you have the power, America or Canada, are you declaring that you have the power to hold me in servitude, to hold me in slavery to this commercial system, to this executive government, to this corporate government? Now, if you declare that, then that produces a way for you to bring forth a suit against them, because nobody has the right to hold you in servitude or bondage. I cannot go to my neighbor now and bring a gun to before him and say, wash my clothes, and once you're done, wash my car. No. He could call the police, the peace officers would come and say, sir, you don't have any right to force this man to do this. Well, that same operation of law that is in, just clearly nature teaches us this, is in fact in operation with the government. It's just that we don't express it or we don't allow it to enter into our mind. Why can I not hold someone in servitude or subjection to me? How can the government? They can't. And until you start asking questions like that, you remain in a stupor, you remain in a slumber, in a mental slumber, and in a position of control. So it's really important, and I know it's been 4 weeks now, and we're going to start getting into different topics if I continue to do the show in the coming weeks. I haven't made that decision yet, but it's just really important to understand that you, as a citizen, go find out what that means. Go find out that it's placed you in servitude and subjection to the political powers that are present in your state, whether it's America or Canada or Great Britain or whatever other state it is. When you title yourself or designate yourself a citizen, you've given up. You've given up your rights and freedoms as a human being. You've taken a designation that's underneath that designation that is rightfully yours. And by doing so, like David said today in the call, you become a commercial instrument on their behalf. They can tax you, They can charge you for licenses. They can charge you fees and the like. You become a commercial instrument for them to make profit off of you. Now, they hide behind the fact, they'll say, well, taxation and all this is for the government. It's to support public services and the like. If you take the time to go and see where the government actually spends its money, you will see that the majority of any money collected, the majority of it does not support your fellow human being. It does not support the public systems. The public systems in America and in Canada, and I speak from study and from knowing them, are horrible. They do not represent your fundamental rights and freedoms as a human being. They place you in poverty. They keep you in poverty, while the laws of our country, or the laws of these state parties, allow banks to make billions and billions of dollars of profits. They will not invest to promote and to protect your human rights and freedoms. They will not implement structures that place you on equal level to your fellow human beings. And that is against all of our rights and freedoms. And that, no matter what country you are in, is not correct. We, as human beings, are all equal. And like David was saying today, we are entitled to equal treatment. If, after that equal treatment, you want to pursue extra, you want to earn extra, I have no objection. And I'm sure all of those who understand their rights and freedoms would never have an objection to that. But there has to be a place of recognition of all are equal. However, the government doesn't want that because, again, it comes down to obligations. As a human being, they have a commercial obligation towards you. Why? Well, listen, they put a price on food, and we're losing time here tonight, but, you know, nature put apples on a tree, and nature put pears on a tree. Now, somewhere along those lines, men decided that they're going to say the tree belongs to me, and when I pull off a fruit, you're going to pay me a certain amount of money for that apple. And then other men said, oh, well, if we monopolize that, then all men or all women will be stuck paying us for something that's free. And it's sometimes hard to ingest, and that's why I haven't really gotten into this in the past four weeks of this show that I have done. But a lot of people don't really understand. The first question they will say is, well, how can the system keep going on if we don't have a commercial system? We have to have money. We have to be able to buy things. And in a way, yes, I agree. And there's a beautiful system that can be erected. There's a beautiful system that can be in operation here in Canada and America. But it all starts on equality. It all starts on there being, and there is already a level of which all human beings are entitled to. You're entitled to adequate food. You're entitled to housing. You're entitled to the improvement of your living condition. You're entitled to all these things. Why? Well, why shouldn't you be? Why should the government allow a corporation? Why should the government give a business a license and say, go take all the gold out of the ground, or go take all the diamonds out of the ground, and only pay us a certain amount of money or a certain percentage through taxes or whatever, and then the rest is yours, and have fun? I didn't tell the government they can do that. I'm not their subject and servant. As a person, as a citizen, I have nothing to say. But as a human being, I have a lot to say. I didn't grant you the right to tell that company to go and take all the resources out of land, those resources, a part of which belong to me. I didn't tell you that company to put all that money in the bank so the CEO can go out and buy a Porsche or go out and have some hookers, excuse my language. I didn't give them permission to do that, and I have a say as a human being. I have a say as a man and woman. As that legal person, that citizen, no. I'm part of the structure. I'm part of the system that's governing me, that's controlling me. And they have the right to do whatever they want with those resources. But as the human being, big difference. And if you did give licenses to those people to mine diamonds, and if you did give licenses to those people to mine gold, and they are extracting the resources of the land, part of which belong to me, may I ask you a question? Where is my percentage? as the human being? Or are you going to claim that you have the right, in a court of law, will you claim before a judge that you have the right to claim all this as your own? That you're going to claim the seas belong to you, and that the lands belong to you, and that the rocks belong to you, and that the trees belong to you? In your corporate fantasy world, in your corporate fiction world, yeah, you can make that fly. But you're not going to come to court with a person. You're not going to come to court with a fiction, with a citizen who's a subject and in servitude. You're going to come to court with a man or a woman in equity. And we're going to see what is it that's transpired. But you see, they bank on the fact that none of us understand any of this. And none of us will put the effort forward that it takes. Because, like I said in one of my first shows, get ready for a fight. Get ready, not a fight physically, hopefully, but get ready for a fight of words and a fight of wrestling. Because they've done all this, they've rendered us subjects and servants of their system because they didn't want to have that obligation. And I wish that we could just, and I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to say overthrow the government, but in a way I'm thinking, I wish we could have, men of conviction, men who have conviction in their hearts in position of powers in our government, and we'll start to say, you know what, we're going to stop making laws and we're going to stop doing things on behalf of the corporate bodies, on behalf of the corporations. And we're going to start implementing human rights and fundamental freedoms and respecting them. And then after we've got that base built, let's go from there. Let's see what can be built. But as long as you disrespect human rights and fundamental freedoms in our countries, everything else is secondary. Because you're always going to have the poor. And there's always going to be those who don't have. Why? Because you allow it. Because you don't treat us equally. Because you look at us like we're a class of person. You treat us like we're classes of individuals or classes of citizens that, oh, well, too bad for you. If you didn't make it, if you can't pursue an earning, a living, and make enough money, well, too bad for you. And that's not how I treat my brother and sister. That's not how I treat my fellow human being. And that's not how we should treat one another. But unfortunately, the government doesn't care. I can't speak for all those who sit in the positions of government, but overall, when you look at the system, why put in Canada why put 45% of our GDP into running the government and only 8% into social systems? You can't come before me and say that that's justified and then have the poor in Canada. And that's the end of the show this week. And once again, I'm sorry for all the problems that we had with the mic. And hopefully there should be a show next week, so come on back next week. Take care, everybody. So you see here, there's two different players being brought forth. Whatever this person is, it's either being born or naturalized in the States, and then it's being referred to as a citizen. When you look in the chat room here, you're going to notice that Black Law's 7th edition, it says that the word person can mean a human being, or it can mean an entity, such as a corporation. So when we have to take the two definitions here, either the word person in this sentence is referring to a human being, or it's referring to an artificial person. Now, when we read the whole context of this verse, we continue to go on. It says that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person. Now notice again, they brought out two different players here. When they talked about privileges and immunities, they refer to the subject as being the citizen of the United States. But now they're bringing forth again the person, that other subject. And remember, the person can be a human being or an artificial person. So here it states, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, and property. Now, right away, we should understand and make a distinction here that this word here, person, the attributes or characteristics that are attached to this person of life, liberty, and property, not being deprived thereof, those are characteristics or attributes or liberties or rights that attach to the human being and the human being alone. We know that in law, an artificial person, the citizen, is not considered alive. It's a legal entity that's been given certain rights and freedoms of the human being. So we know that when we refer to the word citizen or artificial person, it doesn't have life. We know also that a citizen, a person, is a subject of the political power. In Canada, it's and welcome to Blog Talk Radio, Freedom Reigns, with your host, Eternally Aware, week number 4. And hopefully, as my viewers have been coming to get to know me, I go by saying that I'm a human being with intrinsic rights. Based upon last week's episode, I had many questions come to me this week, and I'm going to be answering some of these questions, so let's just get off into it right away. If you look into the chat room, you're going to go see I provided a link. There you're going to have a link. It's www.usconstitution.net. And we're going to be talking about the amendments that were made to the U.S. Constitution and how they affect us. Now, last week we spoke about the fact that the U.S. Constitution, it applies strictly to people, to a legal person, a legal entity, that citizen. We talked about how the Declaration of Independence of America specifically brought forth the fact that there were rights and freedoms that were available to man. These rights and freedoms, they were natural rights and natural freedoms. These are inalienable rights that cannot be regulated. When you get into the U.S. Constitution now, you see in Article 9, it states this. This is the amendment. It says that the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So it clearly speaks about the fact that the enumeration of certain rights shall not deny or remove the other rights that the people have. Now, this type of legal declaration, this type of legal statement is also found in Canada. When you look into the Constitution Act of Canada, and I'm going to open up the page right here, even though I know what it says, Article 26, you're going to find the exact type of wording, the exact type of operation of law available for us in Canada as is available for those in the United States of America. In the Constitution Act of Canada, 1982, it states that the guarantee in this charter of certain rights and freedoms shall not be construed as denying the existence of any other rights or freedoms that exist in Canada. So here you're seeing exactly the same operation of law. We have it enumerated or listed in the Amendment number 9 on the Constitution Act, and we have it clearly enumerated here in Article 26 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, this amendment is just, like I said, bringing forth the fact that they're saying that there are certain rights and freedoms that are enumerated or listed in the Constitution, but these rights and freedoms that are listed in the Constitution, they do not deny you or do not rob you or remove from you the other rights and freedoms that are available to you. Now, when you look into the U.S. Constitution, Amendment Article 14, it states like this. It says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now, you have to take a notice here that they use the word all persons born or naturalized in the United States of America. Now, we would think that the wording here refers to all persons because of what we've been learning in Canada and what we're learning in the United States of America, that the indication here, person, would apply to the legal entity, that it would apply to the, if you will say, the artificial person that's been created in law. But watch this sentence slowly with me. It states all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens, the subject of Her Majesty, and the citizen has to swear an oath of allegiance to Her Majesty. So therefore, it does not have liberty. So when you read here, again, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property, the player, the subject that is being brought forth, is the human being. So in Amendment number 14 of the U.S. Constitution brings forth the rights and freedoms of a human being. Because there are two different subjects. There are something that is termed a person and something that is termed a citizen. The citizen is the one who is given privileges and immunities, and the person designated here in this Amendment 14 has to be a human being. As we see in Black Laws, Edition 7, person can mean a human being because of the fact that the attributes that this person possesses is life, liberty, or property. Now notice that when they continue in this sentence, it says, and they cannot be deprived of this, the human being, without due process of law. Now, if you look back into the Constitution Act of Canada, it's the same situation that's going on here. In the Charter of Rights and Freedoms of Canada, it states that we have all these rights and freedoms, and that we cannot be denied these rights and freedoms except by the due process of law. So the same operation of law that is going on in Canada is going on in the United States of America. It's very important to draw this distinction. It's very important to understand what's going on here in Amendment 14. Because if you don't catch the fact that persons, the subject being brought forth in this amendment, is referring to the human being, then you won't understand that there's a door being presented to you to operate under your rights and freedoms as that human being. Rights and freedoms such as life, liberty, or property. Now, when we go back into the U.S. Constitution, Amendment 9, we're going to re-go over this quickly here. It says the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights. Okay? So, again, there are certain rights that have been enumerated in the Constitution. Those rights that are enumerated in the Constitution, not in the amendments, but in the Constitution itself, they apply to artificial persons. They apply to legal persons, to the corporate America. That's who those rights apply to. Now, I'm just going to click here because there was just one more thing that I would like to show you about this part here. The U.S. Constitution, Amendment number 10. Now, here's where it all ties in. It says, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution. So remember, in the Constitution Act of America, there are certain rights and freedoms that are enumerated in there. Those rights and freedoms, they apply only to the artificial person, the people, the citizen. Now here, in Amendment 10, it says that the powers that are not delegated, that are not given to America through the Constitution, are reserved to the states respectively, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So it's very clear that your human rights and fundamental freedoms, they operate at a state level. They also operate at a federal level, but they operate at a state level. Because the U.S. Constitution, the powers that are enumerated, that are granted to the, if you will say, the government through the U.S. Constitution, it does not grant you your human rights and fundamental freedoms. Only by jumping onto Article 14 of the amendments do you begin to see that there are other rights and freedoms that are available for you as a human being within America. Now, it says that these rights and freedoms can be removed from you through due process of law. And that's how they're doing it. Through due process of law, they remove, if you will say, your designation, your standing as a human being.